The bridge of the ISS Phoenix was cloaked in a heavy silence, broken only by the faint hum of machinery and the occasional beeping of consoles. Admiral Jackson Hale stood at the center, his tall frame rigid, his hands clasped behind his back. His piercing gray eyes were fixed on the main screen, where the image of the galactic citadel loomed, a gleaming, wheel-like structure suspended in the endless void of space. It was a symbol of power, unity, and control, or so humanity had believed for the past 2 decades. "Admiral, the files are decrypted." Lieutenant Arya Solis' voice broke through the tension. Her face was pale as she turned from her console, her fingers trembling slightly. "You're going to want to see this." Jackson stepped forward, his boots echoing against the polished metal floor. As the data appeared on the screen, a cold weight settled in his chest. The Coalition's secret files, transmitted moments before Lieutenant Cross's desperate message had cut out, unfolded like a terrible prophecy. The truth was laid bare in stark, unfeeling text. The Coalition had voted to exterminate humanity. Jackson's jaw tightened, his expression unreadable, though a storm brewed behind his eyes. The files detailed their reasoning with chilling precision. Humanity, they claimed, was advancing too quickly. Earth's technological leaps, combined with the unique adaptability of its people, had made them a threat. The Coalition feared that in another decade, humanity might rise to challenge their millennia-old dominance. To prevent this, they had devised a plan, coordinated strikes on Earth and its colonies, designed to wipe out billions of lives in a single, calculated blow. The bridge crew read the words in stunned silence, their faces pale with disbelief. Some exchanged glances, their shock mirrored in each other's eyes. Others sat frozen, as though the weight of the revelation had turned them to stone. Commander Lucas Voss, a man known for his calm under pressure, broke the silence. "Admiral," he said, his voice low but steady, "the nearest Coalition fleet is 8 hours out from Earth. They'll hit the colonies shortly after." Jackson's gaze didn't waver from the screen. His mind raced, calculating, analyzing. He knew the grim reality of their situation. Humanity's forces were scattered across the stars, stretched thin from years of peacekeeping missions and exploratory ventures. They had only 300 ships at their disposal, barely enough to mount a defense, let alone protect every colony. The Coalition, on the other hand, controlled thousands of vessels, a seemingly unstoppable armada. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Jackson's shoulders. He thought of Earth, of the billions of lives at stake, families, children, entire generations who had trusted their leaders to keep them safe. He thought of the colonies, fragile outposts of humanity scattered across the galaxy, each one a testament to human resilience and hope. To defend each colony individually would be suicide. The Coalition would pick them off one by one, overwhelming their defenses with sheer numbers. Jackson clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. No, he thought. He wouldn't let humanity be extinguished like this. Not without a fight. "We can't defend every colony," he said finally, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "If we spread ourselves thin, we'll lose everything." He turned to face his crew, his gray eyes burning with resolve. "But if we strike first?" The crew looked at him, their expressions a mix of confusion and hope. Lucas furrowed his brow. "Strike first? Admiral, what are you suggesting?" Jackson pointed to the image of the Galactic Citadel on the screen. "That," he said. "The Citadel is the heart of the Coalition. It's their command center, their hub for communication and coordination. If we take it, we cripple their ability to organize. We throw them into chaos." The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence, a charged stillness, heavy with the weight of what Jackson was proposing. It was a bold plan, perhaps even reckless, but it was their only chance. Lieutenant Solis hesitated. "Admiral, the Citadel is heavily fortified. Their defenses are designed to repel a direct assault," Jackson interrupted. "But they won't expect this. They think we'll scatter trying to defend our worlds. They think we're predictable. We'll show them how wrong they are." Lucas stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "If we fail, Admiral?" Jackson met his gaze, unflinching. "If we fail, humanity dies," he said simply. "But if we succeed, we buy ourselves time. Time to regroup, to strike back, to show the Coalition that we won't go quietly." The crew exchanged glances, the gravity of the situation sinking in. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had already decided their fate. But Jackson's words ignited something in them, a spark of defiance, a refusal to accept defeat. Lucas nodded slowly. "Then we hit them where it hurts." Jackson turned back to the screen, his gaze fixed on the Citadel. It glowed against the darkness of space, a beacon of the Coalition's arrogance and power. But to Jackson it was also a target, a chance to turn the tide. "Send the signal," he ordered. "Recall every ship we have. We'll meet at Rally Point Alpha in 6 hours." As the crew moved to carry out his orders, Jackson stood alone at the center of the bridge, his mind already racing ahead. He thought of Lieutenant Cross, of the ambassador and her team, of the lives already lost to the Coalition's treachery. He thought of the billions more who depended on him to make the right call. The Coalition had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity. They saw Earth as a threat because of its adaptability, its capacity to evolve and overcome. But they had forgotten the most important thing about humans. When cornered, humanity didn't cower. It fought back. And Jackson Hale was about to show them just how wrong they'd been. The vastness of space stretched endlessly ahead, a silent void dotted with the faint glimmers of distant stars. Amid this cosmic stillness, the fleet of Earth assembled, a gathering of humanity's final hope, forged from desperation and determination. From nimble frigates that darted like silverfish through the darkness, to colossal dreadnoughts whose hulking forms radiated power, the ships converged around the ISS Phoenix Asterisk, their engines humming with purpose. Each vessel carried not only weapons but the weight of billions of lives, the hopes of a species fighting for survival. Admiral Jackson Hale stood on the command deck of the Phoenix Asterisk, his figure silhouetted against the glowing blue tactical map that displayed the fleet's formation. His voice, deep and steady, echoed through the comms, reaching every ship, every crew member, every heart. For 20 years we trusted the coalition, he began, his words heavy with restrained fury. We fought alongside them, built with them, shared with them. Today they've betrayed that trust. They've decided humanity is a threat, weak, expendable. They think we will scatter, hide, and beg for mercy. But they're wrong. He paused, letting the silence carry the weight of his conviction. Across the fleet, soldiers, engineers, and pilots listened in rapt attention, their faces etched with determination. Jackson's voice softened, but his tone carried the sharp edge of defiance. We will not defend. We will not cower. Instead, we attack. We strike at the heart of their arrogance, the citadel. We will sever their ability to coordinate, to control. This is not just a battle for survival. This is a fight for justice. A ripple of energy surged through the fleet, an unspoken unity binding them as one. The ships hummed to life, engines flaring as they prepared for the journey ahead. The fleet began to move, a constellation of steel and fire advancing through the darkness like a storm gathering strength. Ahead of the main fleet, a smaller group of stealth ships slipped into the void, their forms cloaked in shimmering distortion fields that rendered them invisible to the naked eye. Captain Myra Hayes led the squadron, her sharp gaze fixed on the distant outline of the galactic citadel. Her ship, the Spectre Asterisk, moved with the grace of a predator stalking unseen prey, its engines whispering softly against the silence. The citadel loomed ahead, its massive structure glowing faintly against the blackness of space. Its outer defenses bristled with weaponry, turrets that could tear through fleets, shields that could withstand the fury of entire armadas. But Hayes felt no fear. Her crew worked in perfect synchronization, their movements precise and silent as they approached the station's perimeter. Inside the Spectre Asterisk, the air was tense but focused. Hayes spoke softly into her comms, her voice calm and steady. Remember the plan. We disable the outer defenses. No alarms, no mistakes. We clear the path for the fleet. Her team responded with quiet affirmations, their hands moving swiftly over consoles. As the Spectre Asterisk and its sister ships reached the edge of the Citadel's defenses, Hayes gave the signal. In an instant, pulses of electromagnetic energy rippled outward, targeting the station's turrets and shield generators. The defenses flickered, their systems disrupted by the stealth ships' precision strikes. One by one, the weapons fell silent, their deadly glow extinguished. With the outer defenses neutralized, the main fleet surged forward, a wave of metallic fury cutting through the void. The dreadnoughts led the charge, their massive forms absorbing enemy fire as smaller frigates darted between them, their sleek bodies weaving intricate patterns of attack. The coalition's forces scrambled to respond, their ships emerging from hidden positions to engage the advancing fleet. The Citadel's defenders were unprepared for humanity's ferocity. Earth's ships moved with a precision and adaptability that the coalition had underestimated. The frigates struck like wasps, their rapid-fire cannons delivering stinging blows to enemy vessels. Behind them, the cruisers unleashed volleys of quantum disruption torpedoes, each projectile detonating with a burst of radiant energy that tore through shields and hulls alike. Inside the Phoenix Jackson watched the battle unfold on the tactical map, his expression grim but resolute. "Keep the formation tight," he ordered. "We don't give them time to regroup." Commander Lucas Voss relayed the orders, his voice sharp and clear. The fleet responded instantly, adjusting their movements to counter the enemy's attempts to flank. The coalition's ships, though greater in number, struggled to adapt to humanity's aggressive tactics. Their commanders hesitated, caught off guard by the sheer audacity of Earth's attack. As the battle raged, the Citadel itself became a battleground. The coalition's forces fought desperately to protect their command center, but humanity's fleet pressed on, relentless and unyielding. Captain Hayes and her stealth squadron rejoined the main fleet, their ships darting through the chaos to disable key enemy vessels. Hayes's voice crackled through the comms, her tone sharp and focused. "Target their carriers. Without them, their fighters lose coordination." The frigates obeyed, their weapons locking onto the coalition's massive carrier ships. Explosions lit up the darkness as the carriers fell, their destruction sending shockwaves through the enemy ranks. The coalition's fighters, now scattered and leaderless, faltered under the relentless assault. Jackson's voice echoed through the fleet once more, carrying the weight of humanity's resolve. "Push forward. We take the Citadel, or we die trying." The dreadnoughts led the final charge, their weapons roaring as they tore through the remaining defenses. The Citadel trembled under the onslaught, its once imposing structure now scarred and battered. Humanity's fleet closed in, their ships surrounding the station like predators circling wounded prey. As the last of the coalition's defenders fell, the fleet moved to secure the Citadel. Boarding teams launched from the frigates, their soldiers breaching the station's airlocks and storming its corridors. The Citadel's interior, once a symbol of order and control, descended into chaos as humanity's forces swept through, disabling systems and capturing key positions. Jackson stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, his gaze fixed on the Citadel. The tactical map showed the station's defenses crumbling, its command center vulnerable. He allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had struck back, defying the odds and proving their strength. But the battle was far from over. The Citadel was theirs, but the war had only begun. Jackson knew that the coalition would not forgive this attack. They would return stronger and more determined. Yet for now, humanity had won a victory, not just for survival but for justice. As the fleet secured the Citadel, Jackson's voice rang out through the comms, carrying a message to every ship, every soldier, every soul. Today we showed them what humanity is capable of. We are not weak, we are not predictable, and we will not be defeated. The fleet stood united, their ships glowing against the darkness like a beacon of hope. Humanity had struck first, and the galaxy would never forget. The Citadel, once a gleaming symbol of the coalition's unchallenged dominance, now trembled under the weight of humanity's assault. Explosions rippled through its colossal structure, sending shockwaves that reverberated across its corridors. The once pristine halls, lined with shimmering lights and alien architecture, were now bathed in flickering red alarms. Smoke curled through the air, mingling with the acrid scent of burning metal. The distant, muffled sounds of gunfire and shouting echoed through the station, a chaotic symphony of war. Inside, the coalition's workers and officials scrambled in disarray. Many of them, a diverse array of alien species with scales, feathers, or translucent skin, darted through the corridors, their expressions a mixture of fear and disbelief. For years, they had viewed humanity as insignificant, a species too young, too naive to pose a genuine threat. But now, as the relentless tide of Earth's soldiers poured into the Citadel, they realized how terribly wrong they had been. Captain Myra Hayes led her team through the labyrinthine corridors of the Citadel's lower levels, where the station's power core hummed with an eerie, pulsating light. The walls here were smooth and cold, their metallic sheen reflecting faint, greenish hues from the energy conduits that snaked along the ceiling. The air was thick with tension, every step of her boots against the floor echoing ominously. "Stay sharp," Hayes whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant rumble of the station's failing systems. Her team of 6 moved like shadows, their movements precise and silent. They passed alien engineers who froze in terror, their wide, multifaceted eyes darting toward the human intruders before fleeing into the darkness. The power core loomed ahead, a massive, cylindrical structure that pulsed with an almost organic rhythm, its energy radiating a faint emerald glow. Strange symbols and runes adorned its surface, their alien script unreadable but exuding an aura of ancient power. Hayes studied it for only a moment before snapping into action. "Set the charges. We disable it completely." Her team moved swiftly, planting devices along the core's base. As they worked, a group of coalition guards rounded the corner, their weapons raised. The aliens, tall and sinewy with sharp, angular features, hissed in their native High Chancellor Xyler stood at the forefront, his emerald-green skin glistening under the dim, flickering lights. His towering frame exuded an air of authority, even as the human soldiers surrounded him. His golden robes, once a symbol of his unassailable power, now hung heavy with the weight of defeat. Behind him, the other 4 leaders, a mix of alien species with shimmering scales, glowing eyes, and otherworldly features, watched in stunned silence as the humans stormed their sanctuary. Jackson entered the chambers, his boots striking the polished floor with a deliberate, measured rhythm. His gray eyes locked onto Xyler's, unflinching and cold. The High Chancellor sneered, his voice dripping with disdain as he addressed the human admiral. "You've won a battle, human, but the Coalition has ruled this galaxy for millennia. Your victory will be short-lived. You cannot fathom the forces you've provoked." Jackson's expression remained unreadable, though his voice carried the weight of humanity's collective fury. "Your rule ends today," he said, his tone low but firm. "For millennia, you've used your power to dominate and betray. Humanity will ensure no species suffers what we've endured at your hands." Xyler's sneer faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty, but he quickly masked it, straightening to his full, imposing height. "You think you've changed the balance of power," he hissed. "You are but a fleeting spark in the vastness of time. The Coalition will crush you, It is inevitable. Jackson stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. Perhaps, he said quietly, but today we've shown the galaxy that even the smallest spark can ignite a fire. Behind him, the human soldiers secured the chamber, binding the coalition leaders and confiscating their communication devices. The once mighty rulers of the galaxy now stood as prisoners, their authority shattered, their arrogance reduced to silence. As the strike teams reported their success, Jackson stood in the center of the council chambers, his mind racing. The Citadel had fallen, but the war was far from over. The Coalition's fleet still outnumbered humanity's, and retaliation was inevitable. Yet, for the first time, Jackson felt a glimmer of hope. They had struck at the heart of their oppressors and shown the galaxy that humanity would not bow. The Citadel's walls, once pristine and untouchable, now bore the scars of battle, blasted panels, scorched metal, and the faint traces of blood. The air was heavy with the weight of what had been achieved and the cost it had demanded. But amidst the destruction, there was a sense of defiance, a quiet determination that pulsed through the humans who now stood victorious. As Jackson turned to leave, he cast one final glance at Xyler. The High Chancellor's emerald eyes burned with hatred, but beneath the fury, Jackson saw something else: fear. For the first time, the Coalition had been made to feel vulnerable. And that, Jackson thought, was a victory in itself. "We're not done yet," he murmured to himself, stepping out into the chaos of the Citadel. Humanity's fight was only beginning, but they had proven one undeniable truth: they would not go quietly into the dark. The Citadel's archives were a labyrinth of encrypted data, hidden behind layers of alien coding that pulsed with a faint, otherworldly glow. Dr. Alara Finn sat hunched over a console in the dimly lit research chamber, her brow furrowed in concentration. The faint hum of the station's failing systems filled the air around her, but she paid it no mind. Her fingers danced across the interface, breaking through layer after layer of security. The deeper she delved, the more a sense of unease coiled in her chest. When the final barrier fell, the screen before her flooded with files, thousands of them, each marked with symbols she had learned to decipher during her years studying the Coalition. At first, the data seemed scattered, meaningless. But as she pieced it together, a horrifying picture began to emerge. Her breath caught in her throat as she opened a series of medical logs. The entries were clinical, detached, and yet their contents were monstrous. Images of human test subjects flashed across the screen, men, women, and even children, their faces pale and lifeless, their bodies hooked up to alien machinery. Charts detailed experiments on human DNA, notes scribbled in alien text describing humanity's unusual genetic adaptability. Ilara's hands trembled as she read further. The Coalition had been harvesting human DNA for decades, studying it, manipulating it. The reason was clear. Humanity's genetic code was still evolving, adapting to its environment in ways the Coalition species could no longer achieve. While the Coalition's civilizations had reached evolutionary stagnation, their bodies and minds locked in place by millennia of stability, humans had continued to change, to grow. This adaptability terrified them. Humanity's rapid technological progress, combined with their capacity to overcome challenges, had marked them as a threat, a species that could one day surpass the Coalition entirely. And so, the Coalition had devised a plan. The genocidal war against humanity was not born of necessity or justice, but fear. Fear of what humanity represented. Fear of a future where the Coalition's dominance would crumble in the face of Earth's relentless progression. Ilara leaned back in her chair, her chest heaving as the weight of the truth settled over her. She stared at the screen, the faces of the test subjects burned into her mind. They had suffered in silence, their lives stolen in the name of fear and control. But now, their voices would be heard. Admiral Jackson Hale stood in the central command room of the Phoenix Asterisk, his face grim as Ilara presented her findings. Around him, the senior officers listened in stunned silence, their expressions ranging from disbelief to fury. Ilara's voice was steady, but beneath the calm, there was a simmering rage that matched the fire in her eyes. "They feared us not because of our strength," she said, her words cutting through the heavy silence. "They feared us because of what we represent: progress, resilience, and the ability to overcome any challenge. We are everything they have lost. And instead of learning from us, instead of embracing the future, they chose to destroy us." Jackson's jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He had suspected the Coalition's motives were more than what they claimed, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. The room seemed to pulse with the collective anger of everyone present, their outrage a palpable force. "We need to share this," Jackson said finally, his voice low but firm. "Not just with the fleet, but with every human colony. They need to know the truth." The message went out across the stars, transmitted to every human ship, station, and colony. Jackson's image appeared on screens everywhere, his face resolute, his voice steady and commanding. Behind him, the backdrop of the Citadel's battered halls served as a stark reminder of the battle they had just won. "My fellow humans," he began, his tone heavy with the weight of what he was about to reveal. "For decades, we believed the Coalition's war against us was about maintaining order, about punishing us for crimes we did not commit. But the truth is far darker." He paused, letting the silence stretch, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. "The Coalition feared us, not because of our weapons or our armies, but because of who we are. They saw in us something they could never be: adaptable, resilient, capable of change. While their species stagnated, locked in the same patterns for millennia, we continued to grow, to evolve. They feared that one day we would surpass them. And so they sought to erase us." Images flashed across the screens, files from the Citadel's archives, the faces of human test subjects, the cold, clinical notes describing the experiments. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the colonies as people watched in horror. "They harvested our DNA," Jackson continued, his voice hardening. "They experimented on us, dissected us, trying to understand what made us different. They called us a threat, but the truth is, we are their hope. We are the future they could not face." He leaned forward, his gray eyes burning with determination. "Today, we fight not just for survival, we fight for justice. For every life stolen, for every family torn apart, we fight to ensure that no species, human or alien, will ever suffer the betrayal we endured. We fight for the future of all free beings. Across the colonies, the response was immediate and overwhelming. People who had once felt hopeless, beaten down by the weight of the coalition's oppression, now stood tall. The truth ignited something deep within them, a fire that had long been smothered by fear and despair. Communities gathered around screens, their faces lit with a mixture of anger and determination. Soldiers aboard Earth's fleet clenched their fists, their resolve hardening as they prepared for the battles to come. In the streets of human colonies, chants began to rise. For humanity, for justice. The word spread like wildfire, uniting people across planets and stations. The coalition's lies had been exposed, and humanity was no longer fighting in the dark. They were fighting with purpose, with truth as their weapon. Back aboard the Phoenix Asterisk, Jackson stood with Alara, gazing out at the stars through the ship's wide observation window. The citadel hung in the distance, its once imposing form now a symbol of their victory. "They'll come for us," Alara said quietly, her voice tinged with both fear and resolve. "The coalition won't let this stand." "I know," Jackson replied, his tone calm but unyielding. "But now we're ready. They wanted to break us, to destroy us. Instead, they've united us." He turned to face her, his expression softening slightly. "This isn't just about humanity anymore. It's about every species they've oppressed, every voice they've silenced. We've shown the galaxy that the coalition isn't invincible. And now, we'll show them what it means to fight for freedom." Ilara nodded, her gaze steady. "For the future." "For the future," Jackson echoed, turning back to the stars. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, humanity stood not as victims, but as a force to be reckoned with. And the galaxy would never be the same. The void of space was deceptively calm, a vast expanse of darkness punctuated by the distant glow of stars. But that calm shattered as the coalition's reinforcement fleet emerged from hyperspace, a formidable armada of sleek, silver-hulled warships that glinted like blades in the starlight. Their arrival was accompanied by a low, thrumming energy that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of space, a warning of the destruction they carried. The coalition fleet moved with precision, their formation tight and disciplined, like a predator closing in on its wounded prey. They expected to find the citadel under their control, a bastion of their dominance standing unchallenged. But instead, they were met with an unexpected sight. Earth's fleet, battle-scarred but resolute, spread out in a defensive formation around the station. The citadel itself, once the jewel of coalition power, now loomed behind the human ships, its defenses under new command. Admiral Jackson Hale stood on the bridge of the Phoenix Asterisk, his expression carved from stone. The tension in the air was palpable, every officer at their station, awaiting his command. Outside the viewport, the coalition fleet advanced steadily, their numbers dwarfing humanity's forces. But Jackson's voice, when he spoke, carried no trace of fear. "Open a channel to the enemy fleet," he ordered, his tone calm but firm. A moment later, the image of the Coalition fleet commander appeared on the central screen. Thrax, a towering reptilian alien with scales the color of molten gold, glared at Jackson with cold, unblinking eyes. His sharp teeth glinted as he sneered, his voice a low, guttural growl. "Human, you are outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender the Citadel, or we will destroy you." Jackson's gray eyes locked onto Thrax's, unflinching. "The Citadel belongs to Earth," he replied, his voice steady, each word carrying the weight of humanity's defiance. "Your leaders are our prisoners. Your experiments, your lies, they've been exposed. Stand down or face the consequences." Thrax's lips curled into a snarl, a guttural hiss escaping his throat. "You think you've won because you've captured one station. The Coalition's power is infinite. You will be crushed." Jackson's gaze hardened, his voice dropping to a cold, dangerous tone. "We've already crushed the heart of your empire. Do you really want to see what we'll do next?" For a moment, the two leaders stared at each other across the void, the weight of their words hanging in the air. But Thrax's pride would not allow him to yield. The transmission cut off abruptly, and the Coalition fleet surged forward. The silence of space exploded into chaos as the Coalition fleet opened fire. Beams of searing energy lanced through the darkness, streaking toward Earth's ships. The Phoenix shuddered as the first volley struck its shields, the impact reverberating through the hull. But humanity's fleet was ready. "Engage!" Jackson barked, his voice cutting through the din. The human ships responded instantly, their weapons blazing to life. Missiles streaked across the battlefield, their trails glowing like comets, while railguns unleashed devastating bursts of kinetic energy. The Coalition ships, though numerous, found themselves outmatched by humanity's superior tactics and unrelenting precision. Earth's fleet moved like a well-coordinated swarm, their ships darting, but Thrax underestimated humanity's resolve. As Earth's ships closed in on his flagship, their coordinated assault overwhelmed its defenses. A final, devastating volley from the Phoenix struck the Coalition flagship's engines, sending it spiraling out of control. Flames erupted from its hull and the once mighty vessel drifted, powerless, into the void. With their commander defeated, the remaining Coalition ships faltered. Their formation broke, and one by one, they began to retreat, vanishing into hyperspace like shadows fleeing the light. While the fleet celebrated their victory, Captain Myra Hayes led a separate mission to neutralize hidden threats in nearby systems. Intelligence from the Citadel's archives had revealed the presence of secret Coalition weapons, automated defense platforms, and experimental warships designed to protect the station in case of an uprising. Hayes and her team navigated the treacherous asteroid fields surrounding the Citadel, their small strike force moving with precision. The hidden weapons were formidable, their firepower capable of turning the tide of battle. But Hayes was relentless. Using her intimate knowledge of Coalition technology, she exploited their weaknesses, disabling the platforms and rendering the experimental ships inoperable. When the final platform was destroyed, Hayes allowed herself a brief moment of relief. "The Citadel is secure," she reported back to the Phoenix. "No more surprises." As the last coalition ship retreated into the void, a heavy silence fell over the battlefield. The stars seemed brighter now, their light untainted by the shadows of war. On the bridge of the Phoenix asterisk, Jackson allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. They had won. Against all odds, humanity had stood its ground and emerged victorious. But the cost of victory weighed heavily on him. The citadel, though secure, was a reminder of the battles still to come. The coalition would not forget this defeat, and their retaliation would be swift and merciless. Yet, for now, humanity had bought itself a moment of reprieve, a chance to regroup, to strengthen, and to prepare for the war that lay ahead. As Jackson gazed out at the citadel, its massive structure scarred but still standing, he felt a spark of hope. Humanity had proven its strength, its resilience. They had turned the coalition's greatest weapon against them and shown the galaxy that Earth was not to be underestimated. "The citadel belongs to Earth," he murmured, his voice barely audible. But in those words lay a promise, a vow that humanity would fight, not just for survival, but for a future where no species would live in fear. The stars would remember this day, and the coalition would learn that even in the darkest night, humanity's light could not be extinguished. The citadel, once an unyielding symbol of the coalition's dominance, now stood transformed. Its towering spires, which had once loomed over the galaxy as a reminder of oppression, now glowed with the soft, golden light of renewal. Humanity had claimed it not as a trophy of conquest, but as a beacon of hope. The scars of battle were still visible on its surface: burnt hull plating, shattered turrets, and darkened corridors. But within those scars lay the promise of a new beginning. Admiral Jackson Hale stood in the central chamber of the station, a grand hall that had once been reserved for the coalition's elite. The walls, adorned with intricate carvings of alien history, now seemed to echo with the voices of those who had suffered under the coalition's rule. The room was filled with representatives from Earth's colonies and alien species who had dared to defy the coalition. They sat together, their faces a mixture of hope, uncertainty, and determination. Jackson stepped forward, his presence commanding yet calm. His voice, steady and resolute, carried across the chamber. "Today," Jackson began, his words measured and deliberate, "we stand on the ashes of a broken empire. The coalition betrayed humanity, planning to destroy an entire species out of fear. They sought to silence us, to erase us, because they feared what we represented: progress, resilience, and the power to change." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the gathered crowd. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of shared grief and anger. But their fear was their downfall. They underestimated us. They underestimated all asterisk of us. Jackson's voice grew stronger, each word infused with conviction. "We have dismantled their corrupt system. Their lies, their oppression, their cruelty, it ends here. But we will not repeat their mistakes. We will not let fear guide us, nor will we seek vengeance. Instead, we will build something greater, a new order, one based on equality, cooperation, and respect for all sentient life." The room remained silent, but the air was charged with energy. Jackson's words hung in the space between them, a promise and a challenge. The citadel, he continued, gesturing to the walls around him, was once a symbol of tyranny. But today it becomes a symbol of unity. We will rename it Unity Station Asterisk to honor the dawn of a new era. An era where no species will live in fear of extinction. An era where we rise together, stronger than ever. The transformation of the Citadel into Unity Station was more than symbolic. It was a declaration to the galaxy. The once imposing architecture, designed to intimidate and dominate, was adapted to reflect its new purpose. The towering spires were adorned with banners representing the different species that had joined the cause, their vibrant colors weaving a tapestry of diversity. The station's central plaza, once a cold, sterile space reserved for coalition elites, was reshaped into a garden. Alien plants from across the galaxy were brought in, their bioluminescent blooms casting a gentle glow that illuminated the pathways. The air was filled with the soft hum of life, a stark contrast to the mechanical sterility that had once defined the station. Unity Station became a place of gathering, where representatives of all species could meet as equals. The halls echoed not with commands and orders, but with discussions, debates, and the laughter of new allies. It was a place where the wounds of the past began to heal, and where the seeds of the future were sown. The formation of the Galactic Alliance was a monumental moment in the history of the galaxy. Representatives from Earth's colonies, as well as alien species who had suffered under the Coalition's rule, came together to draft its founding principles. The process was not without its challenges. Centuries of mistrust and pain could not be erased overnight. But for the first time, there was a shared vision, a common goal that united them. The Galactic Alliance was built on three core principles: shared technology. No species would hoard knowledge or advancements for themselves. Technology would be shared freely, ensuring that all could benefit from progress. Mutual defense asterisk. An attack on one member species would be considered an attack on all. The Alliance's combined fleets would stand as a shield against any threat, ensuring that no species would ever face extinction alone. The right to thrive asterisk. Every sentient being, regardless of their origin, would have the right to live, grow, and prosper without fear of oppression or genocide. As the representatives signed the founding charter, a sense of hope filled the air. It was not just a document, it was a promise. A promise that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated, and that the galaxy would move forward together. From Unity Station, the message of the Galactic Alliance spread across the stars. On distant colonies, humans who had once felt abandoned now stood with pride, knowing they were part of something greater. On alien worlds, species who had lived in fear for generations began to dream of freedom. The galaxy, fractured and scarred, began to heal, but the road ahead was not without its challenges. The remnants of the Coalition still lingered in the shadows, plotting their return. Old prejudices and rivalries threatened to resurface, and the vastness of the galaxy meant that countless unknown dangers still lay in wait. Yet for the first time in living memory, there was hope. Hope that the galaxy could be more than a collection of warring factions. Hope that unity was possible. In the quiet of Unity Station's observation deck, Jackson stood alone, gazing out at the stars. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he carried it with pride. The galaxy was vast, its challenges daunting, but he believed in the strength of those who stood with him. As he watched the stars, a faint smile touched his lips. The coalition had tried to extinguish humanity, but in doing so, they had ignited a fire that could not be quenched. That fire now burned across the galaxy, a light that promised a brighter future for all. "This is just the beginning," he murmured to himself, his voice barely audible over the hum of the station. "A new dawn for the galaxy." And as the stars shimmered before him, Jackson knew that no matter the challenges ahead, humanity and the galaxy would endure together. The grand hall of Unity Station was silent, heavy with the weight of justice. The air seemed to hum with the unspoken emotions of those gathered: anger, grief, and a fragile hope for closure. At the center of the chamber stood the captured coalition leaders, their imposing figures now diminished by the gravity of their crimes. High Chancellor Xyler, once the embodiment of the coalition's authority, was shackled and stripped of his ornate regalia. His golden scales, dulled by age and stress, caught the faint light as he stood rigid, his cold eyes scanning the room with disdain. The trial was more than a legal proceeding, it was a reckoning. Survivors of the coalition's atrocities filled the gallery, their faces etched with pain and determination. Representatives from dozens of species, including humanity, sat in judgment. Each word spoken in the chamber carried the weight of countless lives lost, countless futures stolen. The evidence was damning. Records of secret experiments conducted on humans and other species were displayed for all to see. Images of suffering, of lives torn apart by the coalition's cruelty, flickered like ghosts in the minds of those present. Witnesses spoke with trembling voices, recounting horrors that no words could fully capture. And through it all, Xyler stood unrepentant, his expression carved from stone. When the verdict was finally delivered, it was as though the galaxy itself exhaled. Xyler and his co-conspirators were found guilty of genocide, illegal experimentation, and countless other crimes. Their sentences were severe: life imprisonment on a remote, barren world, far from the civilizations they had sought to dominate. The judgment was not just a punishment. It was a statement, a warning to all who might seek to exploit or oppress others. But even as justice was served, the galaxy faced the monumental task of rebuilding. The coalition's fall had left a vacuum, one that could easily be filled with chaos. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, new alliances began to form. Among the first to step forward were the Orions, a graceful, bird-like species whose feathers shimmered in hues of silver and blue. Though they had been members of the coalition, the Orions had quietly opposed humanity's planned extinction, their leaders risking everything to shield human refugees in secret. Now they stood as allies, their melodic voices pledging loyalty to the Galactic Alliance. "We were silent for too long," their ambassador admitted, her voice trembling with both regret and resolve. "But no more. We stand with you, not as penance but as partners." Their declaration was met with cautious acceptance, a tentative first step toward trust. And they were not alone. Other species, long marginalized by the coalition's oppressive hierarchy, began to emerge from the shadows. The Thrill, an insectoid race once dismissed as primitive, offered their unparalleled knowledge of bioengineering. The Lithari, a nomadic species of crystalline beings, shared their ancient wisdom and navigational expertise. Each new ally brought something unique to the table, weaving a tapestry of unity that had never before existed. But trust was not easily won. Centuries of fear and betrayal could not be undone overnight. There were heated debates, moments of doubt, and lingering resentments. Yet, for every argument there was also a moment of understanding, a shared story, a gesture of goodwill, a realization that they were stronger together. 1 month later, Unity Station was alive with activity. The once sterile corridors now pulsed with life, the mingling of countless species creating a symphony of voices, colors, and cultures. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at the station, their designs as varied as the stars themselves. Sleek human vessels rested beside the organic, vine-like ships of the Thrill and the crystalline structures of the Lithari. The sight was a testament to what they had achieved, a fragile but growing alliance, bound by a shared dream of peace. Admiral Jackson Hale stood on the observation deck, his hands clasped behind his back. The vast expanse of space stretched out before him, the stars glittering like scattered diamonds. From this vantage point, he could see the docking bays bustling with activity, the steady rhythm of progress unfolding before his eyes. Yet beneath the pride he felt, there was also a quiet uncertainty. Captain Myra Hayes approached, her footsteps soft against the polished floor. She stood beside him, her gaze following his. For a moment neither of them spoke, the silence between them filled with unspoken thoughts. "Do you think this will last, Admiral?" Hayes finally asked, her voice quiet but tinged with doubt. "Can species as different as ours truly work together?" Jackson didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the scene before him, as though searching the stars for an answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, thoughtful. "We have to try," he said. "The alternative is endless fear and violence. We've seen what that leads to. Humanity's adaptability isn't just our greatest strength, it's the key to building something better. If we can adapt to survive, then we can adapt to thrive. Together." Hayes nodded, though the doubt in her eyes didn't fully fade. "It's just hard to believe sometimes, after everything we've been through." Jackson turned to her, his expression softening. "It's not about believing it's easy, Myra. It's about believing it's worth it." As the Galactic Alliance began its work, humanity's role as a leader in cooperation and progress became clear. Their ability to bridge gaps, to find common ground even in the face of adversity, set an example for others to follow. Earth, once seen as a backwater world on the fringes of galactic civilization, now stood at the heart of a movement that promised to reshape the galaxy. The betrayal that had been meant to destroy humanity had instead united the stars. The Coalition's attempt to extinguish Earth had sparked a fire of resilience and hope, one that now burned brightly across the galaxy. The scars of the past remained, but they served as reminders of what had been overcome and of what still needed to be done. As Jackson and Hayes stood together, the hum of activity around them seemed to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. The stars outside the observation deck shone with a steady light, as if bearing witness to the changes unfolding across the galaxy. "This is just the beginning," Jackson murmured, more to himself than to Hayes. "There's so much work to do, so many wounds to heal, but for the first time I think we have a chance." Hayes glanced at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "A chance is all we've ever needed." And as they stood there, watching the ships come and go,